my adopted son's photo in a missing child database. He wasn't the only one. I was scrolling through Facebook on a random Thursday evening when I saw the sponsored ad that changed everything. It was one of those help find missing children posts showing photos of kids who'd disappeared over the years. I almost scrolled past without looking closely, but something made me pause. The boy in the third row looked exactly like my 8-year-old son Oliver. Same dark hair, same brown eyes, same distinctive dimple on his left cheek. My heart started racing as I stared at the photo. The resemblance was so striking it made my hands shake as I screenshot the image. The caption underneath read, Vincent Castellano, missing since 2018, age 3 at time of disappearance. My breath caught because Oliver had been 3 when we adopted him through Sunshine Family Services 2 years ago. The agency told us his birth mother was a teenager who couldn't provide proper care and that he'd been in foster care briefly before becoming available for adoption. We'd been trying to have children for 6 years and Oliver felt like a miracle. I called my husband Daniel into the living room and showed him the photo without saying anything. His face went white as he looked from the screen to Oliver, who was playing with blocks on the carpet nearby. That's impossible, Daniel whispered, but his voice was shaking. The adoption agency ran background checks. They verified everything. I zoomed in on the missing child poster and found more details that made my stomach drop. Vincent had been reported missing from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, only 3 hours from our home in Minneapolis. His parents were listed as Maria and Anthony Castellano. The physical description matched Oliver perfectly, right down to a small birthmark on his right shoulder. According to the poster, Vincent had been playing in his backyard when he disappeared, and despite extensive searches, no trace of him had ever been found. I spent the next hour comparing every detail I could find online about the missing child with what I knew about Oliver's background. The ages lined up perfectly, the physical characteristics were identical, and the timeline of Vincent's disappearance coincided with when Oliver supposedly became available for adoption. My hands were trembling as I called Sunshine Family Services emergency line, but it went straight to voicemail with a message saying the agency was permanently closed due to administrative issues. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the adoption process, how smooth everything had been, almost too smooth. Usually adoptions took months or years of waiting, but with Oliver, we'd gotten a call saying a child was available within 2 weeks of submitting our application. The social worker, Patricia Valdez, had been friendly and professional, walking us through all the paperwork and assuring us that Oliver's birth family had voluntarily surrendered their rights. At 3 in the morning, I crept into Oliver's room and sat beside his bed, watching him sleep. His face looked so peaceful and innocent, exactly like the child in that missing poster. I studied every feature, trying to find differences that would prove this was all a horrible coincidence, but the resemblance was undeniable. This beautiful boy we'd been raising as our son might be someone else's child entirely, stolen from parents who'd been searching for him for years. The next morning, I waited until Daniel left for work, and Oliver was at school before calling the phone number on the missing child poster. My hands shook so badly I could barely dial. Hello, this is Maria Castellano, she said, and her voice sounded tired and sad. I forced myself to speak, explaining that I'd seen the poster and thought I might have information about Vincent. Maria's reaction was immediate and heartbreaking. She started crying and asking rapid-fire questions about where I'd seen him and whether he was safe. I tried to explain the situation carefully, that we'd adopted a child through an agency that might not have been legitimate, and that our son looked identical to her missing Vincent. She begged me to send photos, and when I did, she called back within minutes, sobbing so hard she could barely speak. That's my baby, she kept saying. That's Vincent. Look at that dimple. That's exactly the same. And the birthmark on his shoulder? Did you see the birthmark? I confirmed that Oliver had the same mark, and Maria broke down completely. She said she'd known he was alive somewhere, had felt it in her heart despite what police told her. She'd never stopped looking, never stopped hoping, and now she was staring at recent photos of her son living with strangers 3 hours away. I agreed to meet Maria and her husband Anthony at a coffee shop halfway between our cities the next day. The drive felt like the longest 2 hours of my life as I rehearsed what I would say, how I would explain that we'd had no idea we were raising a kidnapped child. Full story on my channel or linked below.